So the RLM Racing Bikesports Championship heading out onto the grid for the third and final race of the weekend. It's Scott Mittel in the Mittel on pole position. Next to him is Charles Hall. On the second row, it's Ashley Hicklin in car number 16 and Joe Stables number 98. Third row, Chris Preen number 2 and Julian Griffiths in car number 9. Richard Stables 95 and Aaron Bailey number 1 on row 4. Row 5, it's number 15, Robert Rees, and number 4, Tony Barwell. Row 6, 24, Ian Charles, and number 93, Joe Spencer. The 7th row, 5 and 26, 5, Doug Carter, and 26, Mark Boots. The 8th row, 55 and 44, 55, Bruce Crawley, and 44, Andrew Kimpton. Then onto the 9th row, and there we find number 30, Mark Grayson, and number 7, Ross Drew. 10th row, 46, Chris Child, and 60, Andrew Gord. Row 11, 33, Richard Hardy, and 21, Charles Adrian. Lee Bailey, 111, and John Paul Ivy, number 39, rounding out the first 12 rows of this very big grid for the RLM Racing Bikesports Championship. The cars heading through Club Corner now and out for the rolling start in this race. Already 2 wins this weekend for Scott Mittel in his eponymous Mittel chassis. First 2 wins for that car in Bikesports. The lights go out, the race gets underway, and it's a pretty even start between the 2 front row men. It's Charles Hall on the outside line, but it's Mittel that holds on the inside. A spin though for number 98 Joe Stables and for Ashley Hicklin as well, and he is caught by the number 1 car of Aaron Bailey as well. So there's 3 cars out there at the first corner. There is Hicklin's car, number 16, and just a bit to its left you would see the number 1 car, Aaron Bailey, as well, all triggered by Joe Stables having a spin. He's going off, well, carrying on I should say, in the background there, but 2 cars stranded at Abbey on the first lap, and that's meant there's a big gap between the first 2 cars and the rest. So it's Scott Mittel, number 27, leading. Number 77, Charles Hall, is second, and a long gap back to, it looks like, Chris Preen in third place.
And Joe Stables is the guy who's had the phenomenal run through in Class B, isn't he? So there's lots of drama down here. It's certainly Mittel who leads from Charles Hall. He braved it out, didn't he, on the inside at Abbey to Scott Mittel. And the safety car is coming out. The safety car is coming out onto the circuit, as is the JCB, but there's big waved yellows here.
Yeah, safety car boards out, the yellow flag's out as well. Ashley Hicklin and Aaron Bailey both out of their cars, I'm pleased to say, so they're okay, and the cars will just queue up behind the safety car being driven by Trevor Gregory, Nick Emerson, also aboard that too, of the 750 Motor Club team aboard the safety car this weekend. And this is the first time I've seen it. Oh, and Joe Locke is absolutely furious. He's also out of the race, throwing down his gloves. Like all good racing drivers do when they've pulled off on the first lap of the race.
Had a line come off in the second race, and that was fixed straight away back at the pits, but he's out.
He is. So he was up in contention in the earlier race, wasn't he? In about 4th or 5th position, had a 4th place finish yesterday. Joe Locke, who is a convert to sports prototype racing. He previously raced in the Civic Cup, so not necessarily an obvious move, but one that Joe Locke has made. So first time we've seen the safety car on track this weekend, and it's got the grid behind it. You'll see the cars weaving across to try and keep as much heat into these slick tyres as they possibly can do while running at a reduced pace. The Ash Hicklin car, I can see, is just being winched away. I think the marshals are going to try and push the Aaron Bailey car away from the scene, but it's going to be at least one more lap underneath the safety car, one would think. Ash Hicklin, who's had 2 good results already during the course of this weekend, 3rd place in both of the first 2 races. He is walking off back to the medical vehicles over here.
Joe Stables, who had that first spin in the middle of Abbey at the first lap, came round in 9th, 3rd behind Chris Preen and Bruce Crawley in the B class. So he may flux back into this.
Well, I think as well, with the safety car keeping the field nice and compressed, I think there's a good chance that Joe Stables
will still win it. Yeah, still win his section.
Yeah, still assuming there's no damage to that car, and I don't think there was. I think it was just a harmless spin.
Yeah, he went round, and then Hicklin went round kind of out of a reaction to that, and they got clobbered by Bailey. That's why Hicklin's been taken to the medical centre, just for a check-up, because he did have an impact. It was quite a fair-sized impact.
And certainly there's a lot more caution around any impact these days in club racing, and
all these drivers wear their hands devices, etc. as a mandatory point.
Yes, there's a lot more focus on that generally, especially the question of any head injuries in all sport these days. Concussion is something that's taken a lot more seriously in rugby and football and cricket and so forth, but also important that drivers are given the proper checks. And Ash Hicklin has headed over there, he's chatting to the medical team, I can see at the moment, as his car has been recovered to a position of safety. So we're working lap 3 of this race now. The car's heading down the Hanger Straight. Scott Mattel, of course, leading, the only Class C car out there. Charles Hall leading Class A.
There'll be another lap, Ian, because they're returning with JCB.
Yeah.
Oh, some fine sprinting among the marshals. There's probably some athletes among them.
Absolutely right. It's a sight to behold.
Who's going to win, the JCB driver or the marshal?
The
Marshal's
going to win.
Yeah.
You can't see this, but out of our window we can see the marshal sprinting, and he gets to
literally
Aaron Bailey's.
Sprinting.
Yeah. See, I'd be no good as a marshal for exactly that reason. There we are, the marshal with the tow rope in the black there, that's just looping it over the roll hoop. He's the guy that's just sprinted across there. What dedication it is, and of course, it is important because the drivers here are behind the safety car. They're losing valuable racing time, so it's important that the marshals do work efficiently, and that's tremendous commitment from the volunteer marshals here at Silverstone today. So many thanks to them. Of course, if you are interested in marshalling, if you head to, for example, the 750 Motor Club website, 750mc.co.uk, you'll find out how you can get more involved in marshalling with the 750 Motor Club. But you don't have to be affiliated to a particular club. If you've got a local circuit, you'll be able to marshal at that.
Or adept at sprinting.
Absolutely. Maybe this is where the British Olympic team should be looking for selecting for 2020 in Tokyo. They should be heading to the racetracks of the Midlands and seeing the talent on show. So behind the safety car then, the Renault Megane, is Scott Mittel. So we'll have had at least 3 laps out of it. They're just moving that now.
Interesting to see whether he can successfully back up Charles Hall with a heavier car, heavier but probably more powerful car, at the Vale and Club Complex.
Yeah.
When the safety car lights go out, which
they might do
could well do
shortly.
this lap.
Yeah, I think the safety car going relatively slowly at the moment, knowing that we're only moments away from getting the track clear here.
Yeah, this is really good communication between race control and the postcard driver, who's now legged it again a little bit. There's some extreme weaving, isn't there, down the right across the full width of the track, from a couple of the guys, particularly in the SR3s.
Making use of all of this newly relayed tarmac here at Silverstone, aren't they? Now, we've still not quite got the clear track here. We've still got the lights on the safety car. I think we're going to have to go one more.
But they're into Vale.
Well, has the safety car now headed down the pit lane? We will see.
Yellow flags are still out.
Yeah.
No, the safety car has come round.
Yeah, and it's just not quite worked out. I think without almost coming to a halt, I don't think there's any real way of doing that. It's just by a fraction failed.
It was by probably 5 seconds.
Yeah, but better safe than sorry.
You do what you can do.
And we'll have one more lap behind the safety car as the Aaron Bailey car number 1 is now in a position of safety. Just looking through the bins is Marcus to assess any damage on that.
Yeah, it's a wallop in the front, but it depends how far that goes back. They're pretty stout foot boxes in those cars to prevent the chassis, which is effectively a pretty hefty tube frame, from sustaining damage.
We've had 8 minutes of this race, so fortunately it's an 18-minute plus 1 lap race, so there's still going to be a decent slug of time to go when we do get underway, which I expect now will be at the end of this lap, so there'll still be about 9 minutes plus a lap to go, so plenty of racing laps we can fit in that, with the lap times for these cars being a low sort of 1 minute 3, 1 minute 4 for the quickest drivers, so we'll still get.
Bear in mind that the lights are off on the Clio. Bear in mind that Scott Mattel looking to complete a 5-race route for Mattel cars with Suzuki engines this weekend, and Charles Hall kind of keen to prevent that from happening in the Radical, because Chippy Wesmail won both RGB Sports 1000 races, Both bike sport races so far been won by Scott Mittell.
So the safety car will have peeled off now. So Scott Mittell's controlling the pace and he can decide when to go.
Yes, he's decided. That's quite clever. He used a fair amount of track. He's got to go.
And so Scott Mittell will lead the restart. 5 laps will be completed then. We'll go on to lap 6 of the race, but only the second racing lap, as it were, under race conditions. Green flags waving then all around the circuit as Scott Mittell led Charles Hall over the line by 2/10. Already they've pulled out a bit of daylight over Richard Stables, number 95, in 3rd position.
He was very, very brave through Abbey, wasn't he, Scott Mittell? You could hear the engine scream.
And Joe Stables there, number 98, who instigated all of that. He's still there, trying to find a way past Joe Spencer, number 93. So I think Joe Stables already up into 8th position.
Charles Hall clipped the curb at Chapel that time, coming onto the straight, which kicked up a little bit of dust. But he's still there in the slipstream of the lead car, such as it is. Ian Mittell, Scott's father, has spent the last couple of weeks making a rather bigger rear diffuser on that car to change the aero balance, give it some more downforce, and it seems to be working pretty well. Here comes 9, that's Julian Griffiths battling with Chris Preen by the looks of things. Griffiths ahead of Preen now. And here comes Mittell at 0.72. 98 goes around the outside of 15, which is Joe Stables going past Robert Rees down at Club Corner, and he heads this group in the black and yellow car, number 98, using lots of curb to go into Abbey. Yeah,
he's up to 6th place now and 2nd within the class. He is about 3.5 seconds behind Joe Stables though. Preen 4.4 seconds behind the leader, Stables 8.03 seconds behind the leader, so Stables has got a bit to make up. Let's have a look at the relative lap times in the earlier races this weekend. Stables has done the best lap of 104.24, Preen 104.94. Yeah, that's about it, about sort of 6 or 7 tenths between their time. So it'll take a little while, I think, for Joe Stables to reel in Chris Preen and go for the Class B lead. 7.25 minutes left to go, with Mittell leading from Hall by 7 tenths of a second. There's Joe Spencer, the number 93 car, in 8th place. Behind him is Bruce Crawley, number 55, I think that is. 26 mark boot in there as well, as Scott Mittell comes through to complete another lap. Now 1.3 seconds clear of Charles Hall, so it nearly doubled that time around.
103.44, new fastest lap in this race for the leader.
Yeah, so just comparing that to the lap times we've seen already this weekend. 103.09 by Mittell in the race this morning is the best race lap of the weekend in the RLM Racing Bikesports Championship. There's Spencer, number 93, Leicestershire driver from Markfield, winning the winner of the North West Sports and Saloon Car Championship on a couple of occasions. And this year trying his hand at something a bit different. Also, he was at one point building a Spire as well, although I'm not quite sure what that came to. Having instead plumped for the Radical PR6, number 93. He's tucked in there behind number 15. Rob Racing about to lose a position to Mark Boot, number 26 as well, I think, for 8th place. Yeah, it looked like Boot had just swept ahead of the red car into Stowe Corner that time. Now he's trying to come back at him into the Vale. Joe Spencer, quite a racy driver, using a bit of the curb there at the first part of the Vale, trying to avoid it at the second part of it. And about to come back onto the start-finish straight, and he's still running there in 8th position. Meanwhile, Joe Stables to Chris Preen, that gap is now only 1.6 seconds. So
come down from 3.6 to 1.6 in 2 laps there.
Yeah, so catching at a slightly better rate than I thought he might do, actually, because sort of 6 or 7 tenths of a second difference between Preen and Stables' time has been fairly typical during the course of the weekend so far. But this time Stables is probably a bit more fired up after that spin that's dropped him back down the order.
Yes, Mittell has really pushed on. 1.8 seconds. 103.16 he's down to. So just 7/100ths of a second away from the fastest lap of the weekend so far. And 103.23 matched. In fact, beaten by 100th of a second by chaser Charles Hall, the ex-Formula 3 and Formula Renault racer from Sheffield.
Right, Chris Preen there, you can see, is in 5th place, number 2. He's just behind number 9, Julian Chris. But now, Joe Stables right with him, but up the inside of him into the village hairpin. And what's that taken? Just over 3 laps, hasn't it, to get on terms and pass Chris Preen and go not only into 5th position, but more importantly, the Class B lead, as he really aims to capitalise, as far as the championship is concerned, on the absence of Josh Smith from the last 2 races this weekend and his non-finish yesterday with the engine dramas that he had, the erstwhile championship leader. So Stables...
Preen trying to come back, in fairness. He's not given up the thought, but he's not as quick round Stowe, which probably tells him everything he needs to know.
Yeah, so there's Stables number 98, heading through club now on
1:02.88. 1:02.88 for our race leader Scott Mattel is a fabulous new record.
Yeah, under the 1 minute 3s for the first time. Just looking what the average speed that will equate to for interest, it will be something north of 106 miles an hour average around this 1.85 mile Silverstone circuit.
1 litre motorcycle engine.
Absolutely.
Suzuki with Yoshimura bits in it.
Richard Hardy there, number 33, is having a better race here. He's up into 12th place. Was trailing a bit further back down the order in the earlier races during the course of the weekend. He was 21st yesterday. He was 21st this morning as well. So all of a sudden he's found a few places, aided by a bit of attrition, of course. But nevertheless, a much better race this for 33 Richard Hardy.
And Andrew Kimpton, who's been 14th in both previous races, is running 14th.
Consistency is the key, someone told him, and he's taken it a little too literally. 24 is Ian Charles going up the inside of number 30, Mark Grayson there. So that's a change. Grayson was running 11th, but I think he's now behind Hardy as well. Ian Charles, number 24, also... so that is Ian Charles, beg your pardon. The other car is 44, Andrew Kimpton. That's got the black and orange SR4.
Joe Stables, meanwhile, has caught Julian Griffiths and is trying to remove 4th place from his grasp. And it'll be Daddy Stables, Upper Stables up ahead.
Right, Andrew Kimpton's now gone 13th, so that's all fallen apart.
Okay, that consistency has gone out of the window.
Yeah, Joe Stables now ahead of Griffiths and Preen, but Griffiths trying to come back at him as they head down towards Stowe Corner, I can see, for the 12th time in this race. Now they go through and down towards Vale for the 12th time, of course.
Yeah, you can see with the PR6 is quicker down the straights, but again, he was able to get right back with him. Chris Preen now attacking number 9, which is Julian Griffiths, so he's... while Griffiths tries to redress the balance to Joe Stables, he's got a new problem in his mirrors, and that is Chris Preen.
Yeah, so these 3 cars together, separated by only 7/10 of a second as they come over the line to complete lap 12, with only a minute plus a lap left to go.
Mattel's got back under 103 again, 102.98, a tenth away from the previous best, it's out to 2.57 seconds. Clock ticking down into the seconds rather than minutes and seconds.
It'd be very interesting to... I don't know what the outright lap record for this international circuit is. That's a gap in my knowledge. But there won't have been very many quicker laps of this track, I don't think. Because it's not actually used all that regularly by the really quick stuff.
Formula 1000 maybe?
F1000, yeah, that's a possibility. I'd have to get the record books out. I don't have them here with me. 24 seconds to go, plus 1 lap. Still this battle going on between Chris Preen, Julian Griffiths and Joe Stables. Stables just done his personal best lap of the race, actually 1:04 dead. That's a pretty good time. What's he done earlier on? Did a 1:03.80 in the morning race. So the timed element of the race has run out. So next time Scott Mattel goes across the line, it will be the last lap board for Scott Mattel. As we watch Stables heading through the link and onto the back straight. So already I would think, yes, heading into towards the end of the lap will be Scott Mattel. Watch these 3 cars heading down into Stowe Corner once again for what I think will be the penultimate time. There is Scott Mattel out of our windows just going over the line to start his last lap then, 15th and final lap of the race. Gap is 2.68 seconds to Charles Hall, so the gaps in the earlier races 6.27 and 2.01 seconds, so both reasonably convincing margins. No sign of any penalties or anything for Scott Mittal to worry about here. So it looks like he's going to bring this car home for a clean sweep of victories on the Silverstone International Circuit, and I know that Scott and his daddy will be so proud of what they've done this weekend.
Absolutely. They were taking photographs down the pit lane at lunchtime with this car and Chippy Weza males. They were leaping up and down and making a noise and having photographs taken as they were waving and smiling. And that was 4 from 4. And we won't count our chickens. You know what the curse of the commentator is like.
Quarter of a mile.
This is the last lap anyway.
But it is the last lap.
He always kick up the clutch and coast home, as Murray Walker used to say.
He's out of the final corner, and Scott Mittal is going to make it 3 from 3 in the RLM Racing Bikesports Championship. And yes, he does that thing of sweeping close to the pit wall to share the celebrations with his team, or his dad in this case. Charles Hall it is that takes second place, number 77. And third to Richard Stables. That's his best result of the season, I would think. Just having a look to see. Yeah, first time on the podium this year. First time even in the top 6 this year, actually, for Richard Stables, or I hadn't had a top 6 before this weekend. Joe Stables wins Class B, taking 4th position overall. Then Julian Griffiths and Chris Preen. That's found his way back ahead of those after his early spin. Mark Boot 7th, number 26. He got ahead of Joe Spencer in the end. Number 93 for Joe Spencer was 8th. 15, Robert Rees did get a warning for track limits towards the end of that race, but nevertheless comes across the line in 9th place. Bruce Crawley rounds out the top 10. Richard Hardy 11th. Ian Charles 12th. Andrew Kimpton 13th, an improvement on his 2 previous results. Tony Barwell 14th, setting his best lap time on the final lap. Mark Raisin, Doug Carter, Andrew Gord, Ross Drew, Chris Charles and Lee Bailey complete our top 20 finishers at the end of a dramatic RLM Racing Bikesports Championship. Didn't get quite as many racing laps in as we'd have hoped with that dramatic incident through turn 1 at the beginning of the race where Joe Stables spun, and off in the aftermath Ash Hicklin and Aaron Bailey.
A sensational new lap record then, that 1:02.88 for Scott Mittal. So he wants he would like Class C just erased from the slate.
Let's have a look at the results then. Scott Mittal taking the win by 2.04 seconds from Charles Hall. Richard Stables third in the number 95 car. Fourth, number 98, Joe Stables winning Class B ahead of Julian Griffiths in the second man in Class B. That was Chris Preen. Further back down the order, Richard Hardy having a much better race. Moved up 10 places from his grid position to take 11th position in the number 33 car ahead of Ian Charles and Andrew Kempton. Tony Barwell, Mark Raisin 14th and 15th respectively ahead of the Bikesports stalwart Doug Carter in 16th position. And then outside the top 20, only one other finisher, and that was number 21, Charles Adrian, with everyone finishing on the lead lap. So that was the RLM Racing Bikesports Championship. We can see from our window that we've got the drivers heading down the pit lane, so let's hear from them now with Josh Barrett.
Scott Mittal's given it another winner's garland. 5 winnings for Mittal this weekend, Scott. Fantastic.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. By far and away the best weekend we've had racing. I think it's always nice to get a new win in a new designer car and things like that. And Chippy's driven brilliant all year and just does it again today. So yeah, it's great. Into
the 62s as well. We think that's the fastest lap this year around this track in any car.
Yeah, I had that in my mind. I knew I could do it too. So I thought it was perfect when the safety car came out. I thought, right, a couple of laps in, we should be able to see if we can go for this. So yeah, that's the target. I've never got our cars. Got the fastest lap around Pembury last year, but that was with Paul Smith driving, so I want one.
A couple more rounds to go in Bikesports. They tracks you think will suit the car?
Yeah. So looking forward to the last 2 rounds in it. Looking forward to going to Alton Park. I've been there for a couple of years and love that place. So
be spectacular in these, won't it?
Oh, it'd be awesome in these. Yeah.
See you there. Well done. Another second for Charles Hall. Again, only a couple of seconds behind Scott.
I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm chuffed to bits today for this weekend for the. Make the maximum of, I know Josh has his engine problems, so you know if we didn't capitalise on it, it puts us right back in the championship a little bit more. So, but it's the Mittal weekend, so there's nothing. We didn't have anything for it, so well done to the lads, and I've had a cracking weekend. Love the racing, but we just got to go back to the drawing board for them.
Well, good luck for the rest of the year. Well done on another class win. In third position overall was Richard Stables. Well done, Richard. You've sort of not been quite at the front this year, but to this race, you're absolutely right there.
Well, it's only the second weekend I've been out this year, and it's nearly Christmas, isn't it?
What stopped you before this weekend coming out?
I don't know really. I've been running Joe, which has been a bit of a pleasure. So I've enjoyed doing that. But when we've got a weekend of it, then sometimes I find time to have a go myself.
And being back on the podium, I mean, probably the most competitive bike sports grid we've seen. It must be great.
It's the most competitive for a lot of years, is this. But Joe's been giving me lessons, so he's been tutoring me this weekend. So I've knocked a few seconds off my time.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
So that was our top three. Third place for Richard Stables, second for Charles Hall, but the race winner was Scott Mattel. We go back now to the Classic Stock Cats Championship.